Lunchtime Live with Andrea Gilligan
with insurancebroker.ie
on Newstalk.
Now, a Ghostbusters team literally has been investigating claims of paranormal activity at the Irish Wake Museum in County Waterford, and it's after numerous reports seemingly from staff and workers, trade workers there, claiming to have seen some kind of reflections in the glass. Laura Nugent is a tour guide at the Wake Museum in Waterford. Laura's with us on the line today. Laura, what are people saying that they've spotted in the glass?
Indeed. So some people are reporting that they've seen reflections of children's faces in the glass, but I've had a slightly different experience myself now.
Right. Now, I have to be very honest with you, Laura, okay? I am going to need some convincing about this, okay? Right?
Indeed.
Because I'm... right, well, go on. Tell me, what have you spotted?
Indeed. So there's one room in particular. It's the theme regarding the room is called Death Commemorated, and it's filled with all kinds of kind of Georgian mourning jewelry, a lot of which would have locks of hair of deceased people and that kind of thing. So it's quite a personal room. But there's a very unusual kind of energy in that room. We've had people reporting feeling faint, feeling nauseous. We've had some people, of course, seeing reflections of kind of children's faces in the glass, that kind of thing. But from my own experience, I personally saw the silhouette of a woman in that room whilst I was on tour, and it was a very unusual experience, to say the least.
And when you say the silhouette of a woman, just describe that for me.
Indeed. So it was, I was in the room just adjacent. Now, the rooms themselves are quite open plan. And I heard a noise coming from the room to my right. This Death Commemorated room 4, we'd call it. And as I looked up, I could see kind of the figure almost of a woman, kind of almost in shadow, just standing in the open space. There were no facial features. It was purely just her outline, all in black. She had quite long, quite wavy hair and seemed to be wearing some kind of 18th to 19th century dress.
And there's no, and I don't want or mean to sound smart, Laura, but there's no way that it could have been somebody else's reflection, or you're pretty convinced it.
Oh, indeed. She was standing in the open space beside the glass, so it was. I was looking directly at it.
Right. So what did you do?
I paused for a moment, had a very, very quick panic, remained in character, and then finished the tour.
So you've been talking about this and the sort of the history of the museum and all, had you? And then you spotted this, you saw this in the glass. Indeed,
I did. So I was actually talking the history of apothecaries and kind of different methods of healing that we saw kind of 17th and 18th century. I heard a noise coming from the room to my right. It sounded as though something had fallen onto the ground. It was actually a switch for a small motor being switched off. And then when I looked up, I could see this figure standing in the room, and I just kind of looked at it, blinked a couple of times to see, was I just tired? Was I
going mad?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And then I realised that it seemed fairly solid. And then I looked back to the group and continued my tour, a little bit shook, but I continued the tour nonetheless.
Yeah, and I take you're not the first. It's not that this is an isolated incident, then, Laura. I take it you're not the only one.
No, indeed. I seem to be the only staff member, though, that's seen anything.
Really?
We have had visitors, exactly. We have had visitors report to other guides that they've seen something in that room in particular. And oftentimes we do find that it seems to be the one room that people always kind of hesitate to follow you in when you're giving the tour as well. So there is a definitely very unusual feeling in that room in particular.
Well, let me bring in Cliona for a moment, Laura. Cliona Purcell is the museum curator at the Irish Wake Museum in Waterford. Is it just that there's certain or specific rooms in the museum, Cliona, then, that people feel that they're more likely to maybe have seen something?
It's an incredible old building, to be honest with you. The building has seen 6 centuries of history in Waterford City. So it opened up in the sort of mid-1400s, and it was occupied by people right up until 2003, 2004. So I have to put my hands up here and say that I've never seen anything. But you do sort of get reports all over the building, but particularly the one room that Laura is referring to there.
And who else has reported claims of sightings?
We've heard it from visitors a lot of the time. When we were doing the original sort of setup of the building, we would have been working in it, for about 2 years. And some of the tradesmen, the carpenters and that kind of thing, sort of got a little dose of the heebie-jeebies. But one group that we would have heard a lot of the stories from are actually the people who would have lived in the house. So it's, as I said, it's had this incredible history. It started off as an almshouse. which is basically like a precursor to a modern hospice. It was a tenement building at one point, and then it was a family home up until about 2003. So when these people came in to have a look around the building and see how it had changed and see the layers that we had peeled back, often they'd give us their own memories, and then the next thing they'd say is, "Oh, have you seen the ghost children yet?" So we sort of started to hear that quite a lot.
So if you've been hearing it quite a lot, why have you only now, or why have you guys now decided to bring in the Ghostbusters or the Ghost Hunters?
You know, it's a funny story. We actually, I think we've been kind of ignoring it. But then Anthony from GhostÉire actually got in touch with us. So he contacted us directly and sort of said that he would be interested in having a look around. We'd had a previous group do a little sort of dig as well, and not a lot came of that. But Anthony had a little dig around there last November.
Well, he's actually here with us. He's on the line, Cliona. Anthony Kerrigan. That's who you're talking about, paranormal researcher at GhostÉire. What kind of an investigation, Anthony, are you carrying out?
Hi, dear Eve. Hi, Andrea.
How are you?
Good. We did, well, not Ghostbusters, first of all. We're ghost hunters. We're psychical researchers. So it's not just to do with spirits, it's to do with the mind, precognition, telepathy, psychokinesis, and all that sort of thing.
Okay.
But we contacted Cliona originally to do like a study to do with phenomena associated in seances. And we thought the Wake Museum would be a good place to do it. So the common phenomena of drafts and cold temperatures. And we were there last November. We conducted a study, and with the seance, nothing relevant came up. Only a 0.6 degree change in temperature, rise in temperature, maybe just to do with the door being closed and the room being warming up during the seance, the 20-minute seance. But we also did a talking board, Ouija board experiment, so we can do the technical side, but we also have to do the spiritual side, obviously.
Yeah.
And what we found out during the investigation, the letters NIBH came out on the board. Now we thought this was all confusing, like just jargon, you know. But when you look at it, there being a H, similar to the M and H in Irish, means the. So it was the old name for Neve. NIBH. And what we got there was when we asked who else was around, what came up on the board, what was spelled out was mother. So this lady that was on this lady that gave the name is Neve. She was from 1812. She was in the mid-20s. And we asked where did they originate from, and so the letters MONTO was spelled out, which meant Monto. So,
right.
Do you know Monto yourself, Andrea?
No, I don't. I have to say this wouldn't be my area now of expertise, Anthony.
No, well, it was a former red light district, most known over most. It was 1,600 prostitutes working any one day in between 1860 and 1950 on the north side of Dublin, Montgomery Street.
Okay, and what's the connection? Sorry, with that, with what you carried out at the Wake Museum.
Well, we asked further questions there. We asked what was part of your diet, and it gave us a little clue. It said track, as in chase, and also what was your favourite part of your diet, and it gave the word stram, which is an obsolete word now, which would mean to beat. So you think of Monto, it's prostitution, it was famous for that. So what we got off the board and further on, then we asked who is she, and the letters NI was spelled out, which in Irish again would mean daughter of. But there was a kind of like madam, kind of daughter, kind of a matriarch kind of thing going on. And I suppose the beat, as you would say, was a kind of kink, as you could say back in those days. So I don't know, Cliona could probably clarify it more, but I think there's something to do with Chairman's Arch, which was behind the alleyway.
Does this make sense, Cliona, to you?
You know, we've unfortunately we don't know a whole lot about a lot of the people who would have lived in the building, and the period that Anthony is talking about there, sort of around 1812, the house was sublet. But we do know that the street behind the house had actually been flipped. Originally, it faced onto that street, and they flipped it to face the other way onto a graveyard, which actually runs under the house, because that laneway had become well known for what were termed night walkers in the sources that we have.
So, were you able, Anthony, to get to the bottom of the reflection that Laura saw in the glass, and that other trades workers had spotted as well?
Yeah. So, as we said, we did a sound test that evening in the Wake Museum, and for checking for infrasound. So it's a very quiet place, the Wake Museum. There's no traffic coming up and down, so the noise wouldn't create that sort of below the human range of hearing, which could create people seeing shadows, that vibration. So what I think it was Laura mentioned there, like seeing these figures there, you won't associate that with infrasound. It would be associated with infrasound, but it's not there. So you can rule that kind of thing out, whether it's hallucinations or illusions, can be other things with reflections as well, with mirrors and all that. But what we sense, like I could sense smelling roses, and the person next to me might not be able to sense roses.
Yeah.
So people can sense stuff whilst others can't. So I'd be open to whatever people say, and it's like a silhouette. It's it's different to a reflection, as Laura said.
Will this help you sleep better tonight, Laura?
Hopefully it will too.
Yeah. You're still working though. Like, it hasn't put you off working as a tour guide, I take it, at the museum.
No, not at all. I suppose it's just it's a different kind of work colleague, really, in a way, I suppose.
Yeah, big time, yeah. So does this mean the investigation has been completed now, Cliona?
No, we're waiting on. Apologies. We're waiting on Anthony to come back to us with his report. We're all sort of waiting with bated breath to see what he's come up with. Hopefully, it might fill in a few blanks for us.
You can't reveal the findings today, Anthony, can you? Finally.
No, because what's different with what we do is it takes months to analyse photographs or audio, visual footage. So there is stuff now that I've just related to you there, just divulged. But there is other stuff that will probably come into it a lot more there, As you mentioned, Montauk, which was used in James Joyce's Ulysses, as was referred to as Nighttown. Women would have given different names, when they're going about different areas of the country. So to get the revenue that they need, they would need to move around the place and not be prosecuted by the authorities.
Texter here has got in touch to say, I grew up in Ireland in the 50s where the belief in ghosts, fairy mounds, banshees and the devil was widespread. I feel we've lost a lot by becoming so modern that we've lost a real sense of the supernatural world. And this texter is suggesting, Andrea, if you're so sceptical about all of this, why don't you do a show from the Wake Museum in that very room in Waterford and see if you encounter any strange happenings? I think that could make for an interesting listen. It's one of these situations where I kind of regret actually reading that text out loud, because often then you end up committed into doing this. Who knows? Maybe we'll find ourselves coming to you live from the Wake Museum in Waterford. Laura Nugent, tour guide. Laura, thanks a million for sharing your story with us. Cliona Purcell as well, museum curator and paranormal researcher with GhostÉire. That is Anthony Kerrigan.
Lunchtime Live with Andrea Gilligan.
With insurancebroker.ie.
Weekdays at midday on Newstalk.